Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. And we have everybody here tonight. Great. Thank you for everybody coming also. Additions to the agenda, there really weren't any. They're all updated in the agenda. So we have the agenda before us. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move.
I have a motion from Rick.
Second.
A second from Ashley.
No, Cheryl.
Or Cheryl, excuse me. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Carried. Okay, do we have any public comment? Okay. We have the consent agenda, so there's a fair amount on there that we have the minutes of the January 22nd meeting, minutes of the February 12th meeting. The treasurer's report is on there. Let's see. We have the bills for January and February. We have personal items. We have B. Jones resignation, K. Jones contract, D. Kemper contract, A. Lorenz contract, A. Lurick contract, D. Orleans a 1920 assignment, D. Schultz contract, B. Scoglin retirement, and then we have 2019 assignments for spring 2019 assignments. We have everything that everybody has seen, but on this one, because we have the bills in there, do we want Cheryl to make a comment on that? I'm assuming so.
Do you have anything for bills or treasurer's report?
I did go in and go through the bills, and I didn't see anything noteworthy. Everything was pretty much normal.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
A motion from Thomas,
A second.
second from Cheryl. Any further discussion about the consent agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carried. Okay, we're on communication items. We have the administrative report from our superintendent.
Good evening. I have just a couple of items I just want the board to be aware of. First of all, our last gymnastics meet, we had an issue with our gymnastics floor. The solution is being worked on. Essentially, we will not need a new floor, but what needs to happen is we do have to add some additional padding and have actually a bigger floor surface than what we currently have. The biggest issue, and I think the biggest concern that Max has, is we already have limited seating capacity in our facility over there. And so this floor problem is going to most likely remove a little bit more seating, and so that's obviously something that's already at a premium. But it's not to the extent where we need a new floor or something like that. So the solution's being worked on, and we will come up with a solution that we can for that issue. Secondly, I just want to make the board aware of elementary boiler issue. So this accompanied the cold weather, and we were actually asked to convert to fuel oil in both buildings. And the elementary school actually converted for just a little bit, and then the boilers actually completely shut down. There's an issue with fuel oil. Basically, right now, the elementary school is a single source fuel site, which could potentially be an issue because we are enrolled in a program that is claiming that we're dual source. So if Centerpoint wants to call and tell us to switch over because they're putting people on curtailment, we don't have the ability to do that. And so that is a concern. So there would be a potential penalty or a fine if that's the case. Realistically, I don't think we're going to be able to get us accurate assessment of our problem until spring arrives and everything thaws out. Because one of the questions right now is something frozen or not. I tend to maybe think it might not be that issue, but we don't know that for sure. So realistically, the rest of the heating season will be a single source. And then lastly, we say things come in threes, and so I do have a third. The water heater over in this building, it's is also out of commission right now. So I think that water heater's pushing 30 years old. So it's certainly out of its life expectancy, but that is something that is going to be coming very quickly because in front of you, because we obviously need to have soft water, particularly for our boilers and to run our system most efficiently.
The water heater or the water softener?
The water's soft.
Okay.
So that's coming as well. Just be prepared. I don't know what the diagnosis will be, but I'm expecting. The last I heard was the water softener is 27 years old, and we don't know where to find parts for it. So just be ready for that as well. Aside from that, I was going to talk a little bit about block schedule, but we have some faculty members here, so I think they can talk much better about that than I can, so I'll leave that to them. Do you have any questions for me?
You said the boiler issues, something you're just gonna, for elementary school, something you're just going to have diagnosed essentially in the spring that
Yeah.
we don't know that it's a boiler issue as much as possibly a
Burner issue
yeah
and feed.
a feed issue.
Right now, it's mostly a feed. It is a feed issue. We cannot get fuel oil from the tank to the actual burn. That is the issue. Why that's happening, nobody is able to really diagnose that until we have some warmer weather.
When's the last time that we had to switch to it? Probably 10 years ago?
You know, I asked Donnie that same question when he came and told me that they've got a call for that, and off the top of his head, he didn't remember the last time.
So it's been a long time.
I would say, yeah, that 8 to 10 years is probably,
So it could be easily be frozen water or something. That makes sense.
could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
Procedurally, something that we could look at doing every off season is just setting up both buildings and ensure that they have that ability so that ahead of it we don't have any water issues in the line or anything else.
Yeah, I think that's something that certainly can, you know, when you fire up the boilers in the fall or something, you could certainly do that. It was interesting because we actually were kind of predicting that curtailment might be coming with the cold weather. And so he did have some people out to give him a test and everything, and they all tested out pretty well, and they actually ran. The problem is with anyone we actually needed them to run for an extended period of time, we ran into a little bit of a problem. So we'll know more as things warm up, and they keep telling me it's going to warm up soon.
Well, it's been cold this winter that we haven't seen in a number of years, so.
Any other questions for me?
How likely is it we'll be called out on not using that dual source?
We will have a penalty.
Do you have any idea of a ballpark?
I think, well, so we had a CenterPoint Energy invoice issue, so we're calling, they actually issued us 2 invoices, and we're being to bottom of it. I'm hoping it's in the neighborhood of not to exceed $500.
Okay. Thank you.
Ashley, did you have a question?
Can I just clarify where the gymnastics gym floor is?
It's the, out at the,
Assembly
At the assembly grounds.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
But it is our floor, it's not the floor out there that was a problem. It's just, it would have been a problem here even if it had been
Yeah,
here.
that-
Oh, it's
well,
like equipment.
It's a springboard floor that they move.
Yes, and I think that's a hard question to answer, Rick, because if you have that floor in a different space that has a larger space and there's more space between the floor and walls, then maybe it's not an
Okay.
issue here. So I don't know how to.
And yet, we got through all the other meets this year and there was no
Yeah, I was
problem.
gonna say.
And the
it's-
ironic thing is the same judges that had an issue with it had been on our site in the past as well and had not had an issue. So it could be something very easily that the State High School League is wanting judges to pay more attention to be more mindful of. I don't know. It's just for some reason on that night, it wasn't going to work. And so we need to remedy it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move to committee reports. Continuing education. Let's start.
That would be me. It's a committee that we just go through the certification requirements for the teachers for their relicensure. It's pretty much the same thing each time. The requirements keep changing. They've added cultural competency and eliminated technology from the requirements. And of course, everything else is pretty much turn everything in so it can be collated and put on the website to make sure that everything's in. They did also comment that there are no more in-service days this year. So teachers have to pretty much look for their own education to go further if they need to. And that was pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Meet and confer.
All right, so we had that meeting last Friday, and we met with a group of teachers, and Cheryl was there as well, and Matt, and we really spent most of the time discussing the plan for the snow makeup days, which hopefully we don't have to continue the conversation because it's only February, and we have 4 days that we need to make up. And so it was just a good conversation going through what we've done in the past, what we would do moving forward. And we talked through that, and there was a recommendation that was made that you all have seen. And so the recommendation would be April 22nd, May 31st, June 3rd, and June 4th would be the student makeup days, or student contact days. The other piece that we talked to, which kind of led into, is the topic of e-learning. And so that was kind of exciting to talk about what could that be, because we're approved to have 5, I believe, e-learning days a year. And so out of that meeting, teachers are going to come together and have conversations, what that would look like, what that would all entail. I think everybody was excited about it. Of course, there's going to be some challenges about, how does everybody get a device? How does their internet access? But I think other schools have overcome that. Those are all things that we'll be able to hopefully overcome. But it's exciting to think about having that versus going into June. One thing we talked about too is that when there is a snow makeup day at the end of the calendar year, having an e-learning day, if you're missing like in third quarter, you could have that subject being taught, those subjects in that quarter versus at the end of the time. So there's potentially a lot of benefit to that. So we also talked about professional development plan for teachers, and just starting the conversation of what that would look like, and really integrating like teacher goals into the strategic plan, and how we could maybe provide more time within the calendar year so that teachers are able to build their networks, spend time developing relationships, looking at what other schools are doing, visiting other schools. So just kind of thinking more creatively how to give teachers, kind of empower them more so that they can bring on their own personal development in their area that they desire. Am I missing anything from?
No, I was really excited about the personal development discussion. I think that could really go places, and the teachers were excited, I believe, too. Working towards what you're teaching instead of having to all sit through the same classes. Just makes sense to me. Also, we talked about conferences, about possibly having 2 different formats for the elementary school and for the high school, because they're just different entities. A conference at the secondary school is a different thing altogether from at the elementary school. And that was just a starting discussion, but it sounded interesting. They may come up with something there in the future.
Okay, anything else? Okay, next will be negotiations, and I'll address that. We had our first negotiation meeting. Went well. We kind of talked about some things, and we will progress with more meetings. So, okay, West Central Education District.
So that's me. I'm on the board, and just for some of the new members, because I didn't know a lot about it. So it's the 4 special ed districts, or like a service co-op. So it's Albany, Melrose, Sauk Center, and Paynesville. And the 3 programs that they are involved in are the B to 3, which is birth to home, and that is based in Sauk Center. The Beacon program, which is full day behavioral programming, that's also based in Sauk Center, and then the Area Learning Center is in Melrose. And so a lot of the discussion was around strategically, we would like all those places in one facility. It doesn't really make sense to have them in different areas. And so Melrose is really taking on that project, but currently in that space, I believe the state is renting out some office space. So there's just delays and trying to figure out approval process of how do you move this room to this room. So the hope is that SAC Center office personnel will move into the Melrose space. So there was just a lot of time kind of spent around facilities. Another thing that got brought up is BBE has expressed some interest in joining this cooperative, and I guess that has been expressed in the past. And so it's just, we kind of challenged the group, how do we think creatively on, would that work, would it not? Part of the challenge is with a smaller district, it's based off of how they're paying in and paying for their fees in their smaller district. So if you have one student, how do you pay for that when other schools are kind of then taking up the slack? But we all felt it was worth investigating how could that fee structure potentially be different, so there would be a value to a smaller district to bring it in. So starting some of those conversations, and that's kind of most of what we talked about, I guess.
When you talk about BBE, I think that's come up before, and I remember the discussions come up before, and I personally don't get that one. It can't be that complicated.
It comes down to finances, so that the other 4 districts would be paying a larger portion. From what I understand, is that inaccurate?
Well, I mean, I think the issues ultimately do come down to dollars and cents. The other piece that that brings some challenges are the positions that West Central Ed would need to fill in order to take on another member, regardless of who that member is. Those are hard to fill positions already for school districts. And so it really becomes a fiscal issue, but also a personnel issue in accounting for service time and all of those things. And so there just needs to be a certain threshold of comfort for everybody involved that member districts that are currently here are still going to see the level of service that they expect. And likewise, if a new member comes in, that new member would see a similar level of service being a member of the co-op as well. And so that's what it makes it challenging. I don't think anything is insurmountable, but it also, there needs to be some planning and forethought and to figure out exactly how it can go, and West Central Ed can still deliver what they're committed to deliver. Because that would be the last thing they want, is to accept a new member regardless of who it is, and now all of a sudden there's a panic because services are not available or something. That's not the situation they want.
Okay. We're good there on committee reports. We're now on old business, and we have district goals.
I just want to touch base with the board on this. I've shared a draft survey with the board. I'll be honest with you, I'm not real happy with that survey. I also had sent that on to a survey writer, and I felt like that's back in freshman composition at St. John's, and we came back with a lot of questions and red ink and why are you doing this, and walk me through your thought process. So I'm in the process of coming up with a draft B. So hang with me on this. You're going to see another draft. And the intent with the survey is to have more conversation about the survey on March 12th. And then hopefully we can get to the point where, towards the end of March, we can have something that's ready to go. But I'm here to tell you, I don't think the survey that you saw a draft of is going to be the final product. I think there'll be components of it, but I certainly don't think it'll be the final one, so it's still a work in progress.
I personally thought the idea was great. I just personally set where I don't want to see it watered down so badly for sending out a survey because we sent a survey. I mean, I know that the one that was an initial draft, but if we're real direct about it and very straightforward with people, we can answer a lot of the questions. I think that can drive the board nicely, but I thought it was a good start.
And I think there just needs to be balance. It needs to be balance with direct, but there also needs to be that balance that people are answering questions that they have enough information on to make quality educated answers to those questions. And I think that's really what kind of the feedback that I got was. So, well, it's fun. We're going to come up with a plan B, and ultimately you guys are going to see both of them, and then we can do do a jigsaw puzzle, and maybe it'll end up a little bit of each. We don't know, but you'll see another one shortly, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we move to new business, and now we're on block scheduling. So you have somebody here to come and visit with us?
3 people, I think. Come on down.
If we could have you down by the microphone maybe, and we have everybody listening at home, so don't get nervous down here. But if you could pass the microphone, it'd be great so they can hear what you're presenting to us. Does that sound good?
Here, settle down. You're okay. You're okay.
Could you introduce yourselves?
Yes,
We don't know.
I am Garrett Grace, the technology integrationist.
Todd Spanier, middle school math.
Maria Rasmussen, middle school communications and reading.
So we're just here to kind of give an update on where the block scheduling conversation is. 3 of us all attended a tour of Alexandria, and so some of us have done that multiple times. This year we have done that focusing on block scheduling, less on facilities, but directly asking questions related to their block schedule and what that looks like. We've met probably 10 times as a group this school year, just talking about different block schedules, what those look like, or I should say schedules as a whole, not just block schedules to start. And then we just kept coming back to what is best for our students. And in the end, it just kept coming back to the block schedule probably would work the best for us. And then it was down to, well, what type of block schedule? Because there's about 90 different types of block schedules. And so we went to Alexandria and looked at theirs, and they do an A-B day. So what that means is the students have 4 blocks each day. And so on an A day, they have the same 4 classes, and on a B day, they have the same 4 classes. And then we were looking at what does that look like for teachers? How does that function throughout the day? And you have a document kind of explaining some of that. But yeah, we just wanted to come give you an update and have a chance to answer any questions.
Yeah, I would just piggyback on that. I've been to a lot of different schools through the sporting events, and ever since this started, I walk around the school and I find the office and I look in the window and I see Monticello, Bloomington, Jefferson, that's where we go to big schools for tournaments, obviously. Everyone has a different schedule. I mean, there is not this is the schedule that it is. I student taught in Sartell block schedule. I taught in Buffalo block schedule. They were different. I do watch the school board meetings online, and I will say that if math is not my favorite subject, not to point anyone out or anything.
That was my favorite subject.
Okay, you were just using that as an example.
I know people.
I see, okay. It does come down to answering some questions I saw, watching the board meeting. It's not going to be your favorite subject in a 45-minute class. It's probably not going to be your favorite subject in a 90-minute class, but it's something different. We've got to try. I'm on board with the change. We've done this forever. Why not change? We're not going to measure it as success next year. We're not going to measure it as success 2 years from now. But if 5 years from now it's not a success, we can go back. But if we never make a change, we're just stuck with doing what we're doing. So I think, it's time to make a change and see what happens. And next year, after the next year, maybe we adjust that schedule a little bit. It's still a block schedule, but it's adjusted. But there's nothing saying that, hey, we have to stay. Let's try something different and see.
And I, coming from a middle school point of view, my kiddos are in 6th grade and in 8th grade. And this is my 5th or 6th year here. And every year there's the conversation of there's never enough time to get through what we need to get through before they move on to the next class. For communications, for math, we all sit down and have lunch together, and that's always the conversation. We get to a certain point, and then it's like, oh, the bell rang, and you just want to keep them a little bit longer to be able to finish whatever you're finishing. When we started these conversations about the schedule, the first question that Matt asked was, let's dream big. What do we want for our kids? In the future, what is the best case scenario for our students? And we were listing ideas, and really what it came down to was longer periods of time with them so that we can build those relationships. We can have more time to get to all of our students who need help, who need that extra, and really be able to have quality time instead of the short little bits over a longer period of time. And so I'm very, very excited about this change, if we can do that for next year, and to see where it goes from there. And can I just add on to what you were saying? If we decide in 5 years that the block scheduling needs to be tweaked or needs to be changed around, we can tweak it and we can change it as needed and not necessarily just fall back on something that we're comfortable with but hasn't really worked very well for everyone.
So with a block schedule, I assume there will be more time to do assignments and things like that, because I work in an after-school program, and not to hate on math, but the kids have math homework, and they systematically agree that they hate math. So will there be more time for them to work on their assignments and assistance with that, or how will that help in the homework way, or will that change anything whatsoever?
Definitely. So some of you have had kids, younger kids, like my elementary age kid brings her math home, and I'm a math teacher, and I can't help them. I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I do it, the teacher said, and all this new stuff, right? Okay, I can't help them. My high school kids bring their math home now. I can't help you, right? I mean, you haven't used it for how many years? And so, I try and get through really as quick as I can with that lecture, so there's time to work and get around to help them. And so I shorten lessons, split them into 2 days. My vision, not that it's going to work, I don't know, I'm going to try it and see if it works. If it doesn't, I try something else. Is that, we work for a while, I lecture for a little bit, then we're working, I'm going around helping kids, then all right, now we're at this spot, let's pick up and go a little further, now I can help you again. And my goal is, before you walk out that door, either A, you're done with all your work, or B, you only got a couple of things to do at home to do it, and you're not going home because I ran out of time at the bell and you got 20 problems to do at home, because nowadays there's just not help at home, and not because we're not all educated people. It's tough. The stuff kids are learning these days is tough, and if you haven't used it and you haven't done it, it's tough. So that would be, as a math teacher, that's my goal, is to just mix it up, this, that, back and forth, and providing that work time so I can get around and help kids and we can finish things so that they've got a good foundation before they leave and have to do, a couple of problems at home.
Excellent, thank you.
So you are working on it kind of as a committee. So tell me about engagement of everybody else. So there's lots of other staff. All engaged, conversations going on?
I would say probably
Or is it a total sales effort to get this sold when you get done it?
No, I would say over the past month, a lot of it has just been the indecisiveness, or are we doing this or are we not? I would say from the conversations I've had, 95% of teachers are accepting and ready for it. They just want to know one way or the other, is this going to happen? Because if this is going to happen, let's start planning for it, let's get ready for it. So I'd say the strong majority of staff is ready for this. Or I shouldn't say ready. Interested in the idea of being ready. I don't think any of us will be able to say that. December next year, we won't say we're ready for it. I don't think we're ever that ready for a massive change like that.
Well, it's a change. It will be exciting. There will be.
And people handle change differently. Some people, I heard you talk, we're going to have learn about it, have staffing, have things. I'm more of a fly by the seat. I got to experience it. I got to go and I got to try it. I'm going to try what I think is going to work. If it doesn't work, let's throw that out, spend the, and then change. So I have ideas right now. As I go through my lessons now, I'm kind of like, hey, I could squeeze these two together into this. I could separate. Now that I know what's going to happen, you're planning ahead. And that's part of it where teachers just want to know, are we going to, are we not? Let's make this decision and go so that we can start preparing and do it.
Agreed. I would even say 98% of everyone that I've talked to is ready for the change. Ready as in, yep, let's hurry up and make a decision so that we can start mentally preparing for it and getting some professional development opportunities in and calling other people, asking, making connections. They would just like to know and have a decision.
Has there been any groundwork with the students as far as talking to them about this and thinking about, maybe you could ask one of them what they're thinking? Is this something that they're not even aware of yet, or are they being prepared?
I mean, I think we know that it's like the possibility, but well, I've obviously saw what the schedule looks like, but I don't think a lot of kids have yet. And before I saw it, I was kind of like, but now that I see it, I think it'll work, and I just want to see how my schedule will fit it. So I just want it to move forward, because usually by this time, previous years, we have our schedules somewhat set up for the next year. And yeah, so I would like to have that personally, just because I kind of like to plan more so than
And I think we, at conferences, they went over maybe, and Mr. Hewitt shared with us, to share with our homerooms. And what I did, and I encourage all of you to do, is you have a niece, nephew, aunt, uncle, somebody who's in a school somewhere that has it, right? And that's when we first did this, we all brainstorm. I'm like, I got a brother in Delano, I got a brother here, I got a nephew here. What do you do? What's your schedule? And talk to them about it. I mean, we're not inventing the wheel here, right? It's out there. There's block schedules all over. You don't have to go far. And, talk to people, see?
So I'll have a two-part question. Biggest challenge for the district, in your opinion? Didn't be all three or one of you. And then, can we get this done? As Ashley said, a concern for me is a lot of students may already have a plan for their schedule for next year, and we don't even have a decision if we're going to run a block schedule. Can it viably get done and not affect students next year? Or are we better off saying, let's plan this for 2020, 21? Is this going to have an effect on potential students next year?
I feel like this would provide way more opportunities for students for next year. So even the juniors who are going to be seniors, they potentially can take more classes.
I understand that. Can we do it in time to, not have any negative impact towards that?
Well,
The answer to that is no. You can't do any systematic structural change that doesn't have negative impact.
Certainly, but are we better off waiting a year?
No, because then we're going to be better off waiting another year. Because then we're going to be better off waiting for something else. And I agree with just about everything I'm hearing. And what I'm hearing is I don't think this is a new conversation here. And so as far as I'm concerned, I think the time to go is now. And are we going to take some lumps and learn some lessons? And are we going to probably reboot after first semester and say, what were we thinking? We should have done this and made some changes? Absolutely. And all of those things should be celebrated, because at least then we're making the steps in the right direction. So yeah, I think it's a tight timeline. I think it's very doable. I think the other piece that's incredibly important is summer professional development. It absolutely needs to be a component. So that's the other thing that we need to start finalizing. And I have some ideas and some thoughts on that. But I think that's the other piece that needs to play.
One of the things I look at, having a daughter who has graduated, a son who's a junior, and you can think about your own kids. Both my kids are great kids, excellent grades, but my daughter is much different than my son. And they're pretty much taking the exact same courses, because if they're a honors kid, or if they're this type of kid, there's only our schedule boxes us in. And so I have a son that's completely different than my daughter, but if they want to take advanced placement courses and stuff, this is the schedule you got to take, because we're tied into this 7-8 period day, and one period affects the other. There's zero flexibility in what we have. And so I don't know if the block schedule is going to totally change the flexibility. We're a small school, right? There's only so much we can do. But if we don't try, then my next daughter, who's the same, is going to take the same classes as my other kid. And our kids are different. They should have the opportunity and the ability to take different courses if they want, and not be tied in. Because if I want to have calculus, that only leaves this class available here. Well, then I got to take that, and that only leaves this class available here. And like I said, I don't know if it's going to work, but let's try it.
So what are we waiting for?
Yeah, that's what my question is too.
I think what we're waiting for is Mr. Hewitt had some information out that he wanted to get to students and families. And then realistically, I've been approached by board members and asked, does the board have to approve the block schedule? No, you don't. And you're not going to see a motion in front of you to ask you to grant us permission to go to block schedule. But what the board is going to have to address is you're going to have to address the transition plan for graduation. Because the board does set policy and governs the requirements to receive a diploma from Paynesville Area High School. So that's what you guys need to do. Quite frankly, we can move forward with the block schedule. Barring something that is unforeseen, I would tell you, I think we are going to move forward with the block schedule. I think there was just a couple more pieces that Mr. Hewitt wanted to have in place. And then as soon as that happens, the next step is going to be having the board take a look at some transition plans so that we can address those students that have now attended part of their high school career in a traditional 7-period day and now is going to finish in a block schedule. And the one promise that I will make is that there will be nobody who is going to lose credits going to the block schedule. I will repeat that. Nobody, not a single student is going to lose credits going to the block schedule. The transition plan will be student friendly. So,
How much teacher prep education time is this going to take for us to make this transition as successful as possible?
Can I start with that?
Go ahead.
Jacob, I'd just like to say, I'm like Todd, whereas my prep would be, I'm doing this tomorrow, great, let me try it, and then today is in February, in April, I want to come back and review what just happened. Everyone's different in that plan, and so I think we have to be accommodating to that. Some people love 6 months of prep time ahead of time. Some people would love to say they have 5 years of prep time ahead of time. And some people like to be retrospective in that. And so I think our plan needs to be comprehensive of both, because we have in the district roughly 80 different staff members. In the secondary building, roughly 40 different staff members that have to fit into this. And so I think we just have to be very broad in how that looks personally.
Yeah, and that's a tough question.
Yeah.
You really zero in on and say, we need to have this many hours of PD. I don't know that anybody can answer that. What I can tell you is there's going to be opportunities. There'll be opportunities yet this spring. There's going to be opportunities this summer to be able to plan and prep and bounce ideas off of people. One of the things that we're still hopeful to do, and I know this is ambitious, but one of the things we're still hopeful to do is get every teacher in this building to a building that is operating a block schedule before school is out. So they will all actually be able to go and see somebody, whether it's in Annandale or whether it's in Hutch or whether it's in Alexandria or Delano or wherever. But they'll be able to connect with another educator that is living right now on a block schedule. I would think if I were put in that situation, I would get that phone number, that email, and all that contact information, and the first questions that come up, I would know who I'd be asking. But that's also one of the things that we're hoping yet to do. Mr. Hewitt and I were just having a conversation last week. How many teachers from the high school can we have gone in one day and still think we can pull off the right amount of subs? Because that's literally what we need to plan for, is because we want to get all of these people out into a school that has kids in it that is living a block schedule, so that they all can see it and at least experience it for a day.
So going back to, they're saying that instructors are asking them, when are we going to do this? Are we not? Are we going to do this? Or are we going to not? And that Rick is asking, what's holding us up? I'm saying, I thought we were moving on this thing.
Yeah, and Bruce, I'm with you. I think we're moving too.
Okay.
I guess what I'm doing is giving Mr. Hewitt some space to work with the high school faculty.
But do you see any reason this isn't going to occur?
I don't.
Okay. So then that gives you the answer. So at least I didn't think it was coming to the board. I knew we were going to do the thing on the education. Again, it's not like where we invented the wheel. So every school that went to block schedule, there's a method out there to accommodate this graduation stuff. But I just thought we were moving.
I would just like to say that, while we may not make as a decision of the board, I think we can say that, at least I would say there's my blessing to go ahead.
Me too. I'm on that same page.
You have my support, and I would hope that we move quickly, because I know there are kids out there that have been asking, I want to register. I haven't been able to register yet. That's the thing that concerns me, is that
And I think the bigger part to registration is, the block is a piece of it. But I think, and to me, this is maybe even the more exciting piece of this whole deal, is the new elective classes. That, to me, is really the piece that is looking at impacting registration. I mean, we're talking about doing some collaborative things with this North Pro Collaborative with BBE and the Lemon Spicer in Paynesville, and so there's going to be some offerings there that never existed before. We have basically, Mr. Hewitt has basically empowered all of the faculty at the high school to figure out what's your passion, what elective would you like to teach? And let's put it on paper and see where we can make it go. So I think that's the other piece is, yes, the block's a component of it, but the other piece is we want to develop a school system where kids have voice. They come to school and they are making decisions. It is their education. And that takes a lot of electives. It takes a lot of opportunities. And so to me, that's the other piece that is also a component of the scheduling, because when that course catalog is finished, I think people will be surprised at what's not in it and what is in it as far as electives, because it's going to look very different than what it has in the past years.
I think from a parent perspective too, when I've reached out to people, what they're saying is there's less incidents of behavior because students are not transitioning in between classrooms as frequently, and that's a lot of when behavior issues happen. And so having students between 4 classes is way different than between 7 classes. The other thing where I had concerns initially was what happens when a student misses a day? How do you make that up? But then the more I talked to people, they said that attendance issues are actually changing. So then students don't want to miss school as much. And so, yes, there's going to be challenges, I think, with making up those days, but the impacts of students potentially not missing school, because if they do miss, there's a lot that goes on in a day. So I think there are some really other interesting aspects as I'm talking with people on what they're seeing and finding, and student success tied to having a personal relationship with a teacher is really critical. And like you were alluding to, it's really difficult in a short time frame to build those relationships, and then you have 7 class periods, whereas you have less students that you're interacting with on a daily basis and longer time. And so that, I think, would be a positive, like as I'm looking, like as a parent, those are things that are important. Like,
I will add to that. When you think about the transition time, that's one thing, but when you think about in a class, when you're in a 45-minute period, it takes me 5 minutes to do attendance at the beginning.
Right.
There's an announcement at the end, I lose 5 minutes. So all of a sudden my time quickly drops. So I have to plan that 30-minute lesson, and boom, 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 that has to happen. Whereas now you're still going to have those maybe 5 minutes at each end. However, my lesson can still fit in a lot easier because I don't have as many transitions through the length of a semester.
I think it's important that, you have more of that time to develop a passion for learning with the student, not only learning, but learning how to learn in that format. And it's great that the credits will all be fine and dandy with that, but I think you have this potential to reach students with this longer period of time, and I can't imagine how beneficial that is for these students, that they can develop a passion for maybe something they didn't quite understand before, at least help them in that way. I'm sure that's invaluable for these kids, and I'm very excited for this opportunity for these kids to be able to, learn more and achieve more.
And I think the one big thing that I've heard a lot of just is the 90 minutes. What's my kid going to do for 90 minutes, a middle school kid, or what we envision school like. Kids today in school today is not, because I just saw this on Twitter. I don't remember who it was. It's the picture of the straight line rows, everybody sitting for 90 minutes and stuff. And, gosh, teaching like that is great because they're all quiet, they're all listening, whatever, but kids aren't like that today. I know if you walk through the school or whatever, I have a kid can't sit, he knows he can stand in the back. I got a little wheelie car. So one kid might be standing in the back during my lecture. One kid might be sitting on a stool over here. Some of the kids are sitting in desk, but 45 minutes is a long time for a kid to sit, right? If you expect a kid to sit for 45 minutes and not move, that's horrible. That's our negative experiences now, right? So now if we open it it up, flex, and yeah, and if I'm teaching for 90 minutes, there is going to be 5 minutes in the beginning, or kids are going to know, hey, if I got to stand up for a little bit and do some math while I'm standing up, or if I'm going to lean against the back wall while I'm listening, if that's what it takes for a kid to learn and pay attention, go for it. And so that would be my answer to parents, because I'm sure you're going to get that, is how is my kid going to sit for 90 minutes? Well, I won't expect your kid to sit still for 90 minutes. That's horrible. So
Or 12 minutes.
Or 12 minutes.
I think that's the length of time they give for.
Right. So whether it's 45 minutes or 90 minutes, it's still longer than 12.
Right.
And we still have to make adjustments.
I think you brought up a great point. It will require change of space too, because it's not going to be traditional presenting lecture style. It'll be a more integrative, I read some of the, I don't remember the post, but it was talking too about teachers in the center of the classroom where it's integrated. You have learning where you're happening in group sessions, and it's just a different space too. So it requires change in a lot of levels.
And many of us who teach here have taught other places also. I grew up in block scheduling. My high school career was in block scheduling. And so you have to remember, we do have parents that have not lived in Paynesville their entire life that maybe have experienced block scheduling. We have to remember that.
Yeah. Will this be 6 through 12?
Yes, it will.
Okay. Just clarifying.
I started out as an elementary
Audience.
teacher, and I know from kindergarten through first grade, and then I taught in fourth grade, that is a block schedule. I have the kids for reading for 90 minutes, and a good teacher doesn't just stand in the front and lecture. They come up with all sorts of activities for those 90 minutes, and you break things apart, and you have natural time in between. And so I don't think the 90-minute block or whatever period block, if elementary kiddos can do it, my kindergartners, we did language arts for 90 minutes, and we did a lot of really fun things for those 90 minutes. And so I think realistically, it's how the teacher presents, how the teacher does the activities, and that's the professional development and the relationships with other schools that we can build hopefully over the next few months.
I have something to add. I discovered that the block schedule is actually international. My fiance is a physics teacher over in London, and she had said, I talked about what our class minutes, 50 minutes, whatever. She says, how on earth can you do a lab in 15 minutes when the kids are screaming and running around for 5 to 10 of those minutes? She just didn't understand that. So I think it's just kind of unique that it's an international thing, and I'm excited for us to try this.
I will put a plug in really quickly for my husband. Jesse Rasmussen said for high school science, this is a dream come true. Because when he comes in an hour early in the morning, and I get to get the kids ready to go and bring them in by myself, and he's here setting things up, and then he doesn't have enough time with the kids, and then it's the next day he has to come in and set everything up. And something happens where we have this or that, and so then it's a third day that we have to come in early and set everything up. Whereas he said most of his labs are totally doable in that chunk of time to be able to prepare and do everything. So, plug
So,
for
Mr.
science.
Superintendent,
Yep.
get it done.
Yep. It's
Okay.
in motion.
Should we move on to?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your extra work in this thing. Okay, so now we're on policy, second reading and approval. This is policies 407, 408, 410, 412, 413. We had it last time, and tonight, go ahead.
So first reading was in January. The policies were presented. They have been posted since that first meeting. There have been no inquiries or no concerns or questions regarding it. So it'd be my recommendation that the board approve the second reading and approve these policies as amended by the policy committee, and then we will get them posted to our website and changed in handbooks.
So do we need a motion for the approval
Yes,
of
we
those?
need a
Can we
motion.
approve all four or all at the same time?
Yes.
I'll make a blanket motion to approve those, 407, 408, 410, 412, and 413.
We have a motion from Jacob, a second from Maggie. Any other further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Carried. Okay, now we are then on revised 2018-2019 school calendar.
So Maggie touched on this one. We did have meet and confer, talked about the calendar. And the recommendation is to add April 22, May 31, June 3rd, and June 4th as student days. And then add the faculty days of April 22, June 3, June 4, and then it would either be June 2 or June 5. They would have some flexibility with that. So that would be the recommendation for that. We did talk a little bit about where do we go from here. It's not March yet, so we're not done. And I don't know where we go from here, but the conversation was about, potentially we could keep adding days until we get to June 7th. I have some apprehension about going beyond June 7th, but we're not there yet. So I think that would be kind of where we left things with where we're going. And then I echo Maggie's sentiment about e-learning. I think it's absolutely exciting, and I'm glad that there's interest, and let's roll up the sleeves and get working on what we can come up with for an e-learning plan that would be able to roll out next year as well.
I would definitely have some concerns if it were to go past June 7th, because families are starting to do their vacations right in June, and that would really mess with that. I mean,
Yeah.
So we need just to decide for today.
All we need
Wondering
to-
about the additional days, we handle that when time comes?
Yep, we will handle
Okay.
the additional days. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But right now, I just need you to approve these 4 days.
So I'll make a motion to approve the 2018-19 school calendar changes as presented.
I'll second.
Seconded by Rick. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Carried. Okay, we're going to move to the revised 2018-19 budget. And
Okay, so there's an attachment that has that budget spreadsheet. We did walk through this budget spreadsheet at the work and learn session in January. In February, on February 12th. Things have changed slightly, and I just want to point out what the changes are. So right now, we are anticipating a general fund unassigned fund balance of about $45,943 for the 18-19 school year. That's about a $25,000 or $26,000 difference from what you saw on February 12th. And the difference is our copier lease. We had our copier lease in the general fund, and we do have room in our capital fund to be able to move that over there. It's a capital eligible expense. And so to free up general fund dollars, we are in the process of moving anything we can out of the general fund. And so that's the change with that. The rest of this budget, I just want to point out the sale of school building in Fund 11, the $54,570. That is right now sitting in a CD that matures in March. That is from the sale of, was it preschool building or something? Help me out.
it was the community ed building.
Okay, so that money right now.
Adult
Adult
education.
education, yes.
Okay, the adult ed and Head Start. That will mature in March. The plan for that is to move that CD into an account that is restricted for buildings and grounds. And so that's where that $54,570 is being transferred. That's where that transfer in is coming from. The other thing I just want to give the boards a heads up on, I've also been working on trying to define this Weaver estate amount that was left in an estate. Not exact, but it had to be like 1986, 87, somewhere in that range. That is in the CD as well, and that one expires in August, so it'll be part of the next fiscal year. But again, when that one expires, that's the same thing. My intention would be to be moving that money to a designated for facilities assigned account. And so that will happen, and right now that one is sitting at around $92,000 or so. So as we progress here over the next 12 months, you're going to actually see Fund 10 and Fund 11 come off of this budget sheet, because those two will actually be moved up into a designated for facilities. The only other thing I just want to let board members know, moving forward, this is the budget sheet that I'm hoping you'll interact with. You're going to approve a preliminary budget in June with this. Then once our auditors come in November, you'll approve a revised budget or a budget after audit. And then every February, you're going to see a revised budget. And February is where we actually have student counts for this year. We can do some better predicting of where we think we'll end up in June 30th. So every February, you would approve a revised budget, and then we would get to June 30th, and you would approve a preliminary budget for the next year. So you should expect to be interacting with this budget sheet at least 3 times on a calendar year, about a quarter. Okay? Questions about the revised 18-19 budget?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion from Rick.
Second.
And we have a second from Thomas. Any further discussion? If no discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Then we're going to go to the 2019-20 budget update.
Okay, so I'm wondering if it wouldn't be easiest if board members actually came and sat on this side, and I will put the budget presentation that I'm going to just walk through.
Sure.
Okay, so this is where things are at right now on the preliminary 1920 budget. Once we're done, since everybody doesn't have a mic, once we're done, we can go back and do questions and answers, okay? I don't know that I'll have all the answers or anything at this point, but I'll try to answer the best I can, okay? So I just want to kind of walk through a timeline before we get into anything too serious. So last Friday was the deadline for building principals to have discussions with staff members that may be impacted by budget recommendations. So then today we're sitting at the first budget presentation for 1920, and that's this February's business meeting. At the March business meeting, you're going to see a second budget presentation. And part of what's going to be different in March is I do think we will start having our facility projects and our summer work getting to take shape. And so the board will be able to see another run at a budget presentation, but it's going to be more focused on long-term facility maintenance dollars, operating capital dollars, and those categorical funds, not necessarily just focusing on the general fund. An important timeline, if we would have to put any continuing contract teachers on unrequested leave of absence, that deadline's April 1, that we'd have to do that, get moving on. The good news is I don't anticipate using any unrequested leave of absence notice or needing to use any ULA notice for continuing contract teachers. So essentially, teachers that are currently under contract, they would be expecting to be under contract next year if they're a continuing contract teacher. Third budget presentation is going to be in May, and this would be our final budget presentation. The board could actually approve the 1920 preliminary budget in May, or potentially we would have that on the June agenda. I think it'll all fall exactly where those facility pieces are at, but most likely we'd be looking at a May approval. And then lastly, if there is a ULA notice for probationary personnel or faculty members, that timeline needs to happen prior to July 1. So that's kind of the timeline that we're looking at. So as I'm sitting down and starting to look at budgeting and the conversations that we've had a lot about in our administrative meeting as we start to go through the budgeting process, there's kind of really 4 things that keep being discussed and being talked about. And the first one really talks, and I'm sure people are sick of hearing about it, but how do we build a system that really fosters student agency and voice? And that whole concept of student agency is that engaged learner, that invested in their education, making decisions, feeling like they have a voice, they have a say, they have a role that is an active role in the process of education. It's something that they participate in, not something that's necessarily done to them, is kind of what we're talking about. The second one, how do we develop a structure that supports all learners? And again, our school system is very diverse, just like all. And so it's important that we have supports regardless of what that student characteristic may be. We need to be able to have, the appropriate supports in place. We need to maximize skills and resources of our personnel. Let's be frank about it. Our greatest asset is our people. We're in a people business, and so that is certainly our number one asset, are the human capital, the human resources that we have. And then lastly, We need to maximize our fiscal responsibilities and resources that are available for Paynesville area schools. And this is difficult because there's nobody sitting on this board who really has direct control over fiscal resources. 82% of dollars that come to us are either state or federal allocated dollars, and so it makes it very difficult. But those are kind of the 4 overarching priorities. So then the next step is, what does that look like as far as actually needs? Where are we sitting right now? And kind of from a 30,000-foot vantage point, what are our needs that are out there? I don't necessarily know that these are in any priority order, but I kind of right now see 8 emerging needs. Any of you that have visited me in my office, this was an ongoing list that was running in my office that was in the whiteboard. But the first one is response to intervention. This is a program that really is more of an approach to literacy instruction. There are large components of it already embedded in the elementary programming, and I think it's important to have that be the foundation of our literacy instruction K-8. Expansion of positive behavior interventions and supports. Again, this is something that the elementary school is in year 1. It's a multi-year, multi-phase process. It is going to be important as we move forward to get our secondary building involved in PBIS as well. I don't know that that's going to happen this budgeting cycle, but I just know it is a need. Development of career pathways and programs of studies. Again, while when we think of career pathways and programs of studies, a lot of times people are thinking of a secondary school initiative or a high school initiative, but I think this really begins with the framework even younger and down into our elementary schools. Formal work-based learning program for all students in grades 10 through 12. I think that's a critical component. Right now we do not have a work-based learning instructor. We kind of have some things available, but they aren't necessarily grounded in somebody's assignment, and I think that's something that is important as we move forward. Increase student choice in electives throughout the system. Again, a lot of times people see electives and they say, oh, they must be talking about the high school. I think one of the coolest things I've ever seen are the Explore offerings at the elementary school. To me, that's a piece that we need to grab onto and figure out how can we make that, how can we roll that thought process, and how can we make that kind of a cornerstone of what happens. We need to continue our work with one-to-one learning, leveraging technology to that anywhere, anytime learning. We are in our infancy here with one-to-one, and it's a process. It's not something you pick up day 1 and just go. So I think that's something that's important as we move forward. I think the other piece is we really need to take a step back and look at how do we really address this whole child education. There's lots of stuff. You watch the news every night, and people worry about mental health concerns, about wellness, and I think we need to take a step back and see how can we potentially provide some opportunities for all of our students to not only work on academic development, but also on wellness and that personal health component as well. And then the last one on there, I think we really have to focus some time on our professional development model. And I think it really needs to be a responsive system. It needs to recognize our teachers as unique individuals. We talk about it all the time when we say students, and when we talk about how are we going to address students in the classroom, we want to recognize the individuality of everybody. I think that's just as important when it comes to faculty members as well. So I think that's a component, and it's a piece that we can talk more about as we move forward. So that's how you take those priorities and kind of where we go with needs. So now let's talk about general fund snapshot. Now, everybody needs to understand that this is a snapshot of what is a possibility. This isn't a snapshot of what's going to happen. And there's a difference between the two. So if we just take and roll things forward and not change or not modify any of our practices or anything, and we just continue rolling things forward, this is where we currently are headed. The 17-18, those are audited financials. So that's an auditor coming in and saying that's what the revenue and expenses were. 18-19, that is essentially the budget sheet that you were looking at And the difference here, why that's not 45,000, because the auditors, when they look at the general fund, they're also looking at long-term facility maintenance and operating capital. Those two are technically in the general fund according to state UFAR's reporting. So I needed to take and include the appropriate numbers in here to make them match that first line from the audited financial statements. So the general unassigned that I did show you, that's not an apples and apples comparison. So that's why that number is different, okay? And then as we roll forward, if again, we're just rolling everybody over, keeping all staff and all contracts and rolling that forward, this is what we would potentially be looking for as far as revenue and expense. And obviously that is a deficit spending and that can be something that we need to plan for. We can't, it would not take long to engage in that type of deficit spending and we would be in a bad situation, okay? So if we just look at how does that game plan impact that general fund unassigned fund balance. Now that was the conversation we were just talking about. Right now we're on pace to have that general fund unassigned fund balance without any changes ending up at $1.882 million. If you roll that forward, I'm assuming the bulk of that deficit spending would have to come out of your general fund unassigned. And so we would be down to 1.652 million. So then we look at, okay, what do we have for a fund balance policy? Because one of the things that there are statutes on the books that if a district doesn't have a fund balance, eventually they're going to hit what's called the definition of statutory operating debt. And so once you get to a certain point, the state would come in and then they would require a plan. And Paynesville does have some history with SOD, and that's not a place that anyone wants to go back to because you lose a lot of the small amount of local control you have is pretty much gone once you enter that area. So you look at this, and right now, the fund balance policy is available at that link. It's policy 714, I believe, or 741. And the fund balance policy is 8% is what our unassigned general fund balance should be of the annual budget. So if you look at the current annual budget of Paynesville area schools, it's $13.25 million. You take 8% and you should be just $1,060,000 or so. So as you look, right now, we are sitting okay, but just be very careful because it doesn't take too long for 227 to grow to 550 to grow to 850, and all of a sudden, this 1.652 is actually less than $100,000 and we've got problems, okay? So the question becomes why? Why does it look this way? And this is something that I just pulled from the last cycle of costing contracts out. And you look at the cost as the district costed out the contracts values for the different employee groups, and to roll over from 17-18 to 18-19 school year, we were costing a projected cost of $291,600. Now, here's the nice thing about that. Did any of our budgets say we were $291,600 in deficit spending? No. So what that tells me is the district has done a good job of managing its personnel and its fiscal resources in order to manage the costs that are of their negotiated contracts and keep the district on financial good footing. But this is an example of how, if things don't continue to be fluid, how very quickly your budget can look different than it currently looks today. So what is my recommendation for budget expenditure modifications? What I would like to see is I'd like to see us reduce expenditures. And now I'm talking general fund expenditures. I'm not talking about any categorical monies. Just general fund expenditures. I would like to see the district approve a budget that reduces general fund expenditures to the tune of $200,000. Okay? How do we get there? So I've classified things into three categories. I consider the first one's must-dos, the second one should-do, and the final one consider for the future. And to me, the must-dos and should-dos in this scenario, to me, are absolutely, they should be done and they need to be done. I would even make the argument that consider for the future. We could classify the future as any day beyond today, so I would say tomorrow we should start looking at how we can implement that. Okay? So if we look at our must-do items, we do have some attrition going on, and that would save the district roughly $79,500. We currently have an elementary principal posting out, being advertised for. I've slotted in some dollars for potential salary and contract costs, and I do believe we can net about $19,500 in savings there. The reassignment of our current principal potentially will net us a savings of $2,600, and then our shared business management services would save us $8,800. Now again, these numbers are only representative of general fund savings. So our shared business management services, it's saving us to the tune of $15,000 to $17,000 annually. It's just the way that position is coded across the different areas of the school district. Only $8,800 of that $15,000 to $17,000 actually comes out of the general fund. So just because something may have a larger savings, this is only representative of what the savings is to the general fund. So to me, you add up those must-dos, and you're looking at just over $10,000 in savings. So then we can roll forward and look at our should-dos. We potentially could reallocate some savings from targeted services. Targeted services is programming that revenue needs to be reinvested in at-risk youth. We have a variety of employees in the district that work with students that qualify and meet the criteria of targeted services, and so that certainly could be something that we could use for salaries. That potentially could save us $20,000. If we reallocate some gifted and talented expenses to salaries, it would save $7,000 of salaries out of the general fund. We have a stipend on the books that we no longer are paying, so that automatically would be a $1,000 savings. Custodial sub-budget. This one potentially is on there. It's $9,600, and the reason it's on there is because we don't have any substitute custodians. So I find it really hard to budget to pay out substitute custodians when we currently don't have any available. Right now, when a custodian is gone, we are reorganizing, and Donnie is rescheduling people to cover that missed shift within, but we do not right now have substitute custodians available. 6 class changes, and again, this one is a conversation that is more linked to the block, because I do think the block will probably eliminate the number of overloads, but that would save $18,500. We do have one probationary faculty member who would be placed on ULA, and that would save $27,400. We have potential retirement in a staff member that could potentially save $21,200. And then we also would be looking at reclassifying a current instructor to expand our tech integration services. That position could actually be funded out of our tech levy. And the reason we can do that is we have actually moved, when I first got here, all of our technology subscriptions were being paid out of our tech levy, and I've actually slid those over to our capital expenditures because they are capital eligible again, and so it gives us some more freedom with how we would want to spend our tech levy dollars. But adding that integrationist there would save the general fund $41,700. In the event that that instructor did work as a tech integrationist, then we would have a new hire that we would have to post for, and that new full-time instructor would potentially be $49,900. So that total comes to about $96,500. You add that to the 110, and we're going to get in that neighborhood of 215 or 217, somewhere in that number. So that's going to be right in line with around that $200,000 that I'm talking about, that I think we need to be able to try and reduce those expenditures. So as we consider things for the future, I don't know if you remember, but when Brad Lundell was out from C, he talked about extended time revenue. And it was probably, I think we were earning or netting about, it was either $16 or $18 per pupil in extended time revenue. We can drive that number up dramatically, and part of that would be offering more targeted services opportunities. It is a program that right now is being underutilized as far as our student population is concerned, and it is also a program that we actually gain state aid by operating, so it would be a recommendation of mine that we look at strategies to be able to increase targeted services opportunities. And then I think the other one is we just have to continue being diligent about our categorical reporting. And the example that I'm using here is of our copier lease. That's an operating capital eligible expense. It was being paid out of the general fund. It was just shy of $30,000. We could move that out of the general fund and over to operating capital, and it would save our general fund $30,000. My philosophy on this has always been to use our categoricals to the maximum. We can't overspend in most of them, so once we hit a zero balance, that's what it is. But there's no sense in spending general fund dollars if we have categorical funding that is an allowable source of revenue. So those would be the two things that I think would be important as we continue to move forward. So where do we stand today? And now for this snapshot, what we have tried to do here is we've tried to roll over staff and faculty. All of the must-dos are already included in this budget. There are a few of the should-dos are not included in this budget. So right now, as we look at rolling people over and potentially seeing where do we sit, right now by just adding the $97,000 in the must-dos, we're coming up about $31,650 still in deficit, but that doesn't have any of those should-do items that were available. Excuse me, the must-dos were 110 and the should-dos were the 97. So as you can see, if you add that, we're going to get closer to where we need to be. There are things unknown, and this is the great game of Minnesota school districts. So you, as a board, are obligated to have a preliminary budget by June 30th. We are also obligated to potentially notify employees that they would be put on unrequested leave of absence by potentially April 1st. But I am here to tell you today, we will have no idea what our funding is for next year by April 1st. So we need to use best guess, and here's where we're at. So the governor released his budget. His recommendation on foundation aid, which is where we get about 70 cents on the dollar that we earn as a school district, is he's recommending the first year a 3% increase on student aid and the second year 2% increase. I believe the February forecast is out tomorrow or Thursday, so that will be a day that they will modify, and the governor can go back and make a modification to his budget if he so chooses, but that February forecast is coming. And then the next step, obviously, is the House and Senate both have to get their budgets in line. And they don't have deadlines that I have seen yet, but both of them say in early March, they should both be rolling out their budget. I think once those budgets roll out, I think you then can start to take some shape as to what you can plan for. Do I think we're going to get 3% the first year and 2% the second year? No. I don't think that's going to happen. But that being said, I'm really curious to see where the House particularly and where the Senate actually come with a budget recommendation, because I think more importantly the Senate than the House. Once the Senate is out there, I think we'll have a better idea of where we think the school funding might end up. The other thing that's unknown at this time is we have contract negotiations going on too. Bruce mentioned it at the beginning of the meeting. We had a very productive meeting with the teachers already, and all of our master agreements are up. They all expire on June 30th of 2019. So that's another piece that is a moving component of budgeting as well. So that's still out there. So again, just to review that timeline, we're sitting right here at the February business meeting. You'll see budget again in March. You'll see budget again for sure in May. And potentially you may see, depending on if it's approved in May or if it waits till June, you'll see it again. So this is going to be, by the time June 30th gets here, we will have gone over this multiple times. So that leaves me with questions, and if you wouldn't mind going back to your mics, we could have a conversation. Any questions regarding the budget?
I have a comment. I like it that we're getting a good start on this thing, early. So a lot of this will develop, some of the stuff can't come up. Obviously, you talked about the state's budget and stuff, but we're getting started.
And there very well could be obviously once that, I would like to think at some point in my career in public education in Minnesota, we are actually going to have a K-12 funding bill before school gets out. That's my dream.
It may just be a dream.
Well, I can keep dreaming. So I'm really hopeful, and what I'm hopeful about is once those House and Senate budgets come out, that we'll really be able to make some quality estimations about where we're at. And this could change that based on that.
And this was based off of 1%?
This is based off of 2%.
Or 2%? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Anybody? Okay.
I think the other thing I just want the board to understand, I know that it's never pleasant to have to manage expenditures. I think the thing that I can tell you, and I can have conversations with people, whether they're employees of the district, whether they're concerned community members, I do not see these expenditure modifications hitting any student programming. I think we actually will probably be able to broaden some student programming compared to what we're doing today. I think when you look at the electives and the offerings that our secondary school will offer compared to what it's currently offering, those will be different. But student offerings and student programs are not going to be eliminated based on having to modify these expenditures. Will we have to do things differently? Yes, we will have to do things differently. So if any of that were to change, if student programs become an issue, you will all be notified of that, and we will have conversation. But up to this point, I don't see that necessarily being how this is going to impact our day-to-day operations or program.
Okay. Everybody ready to move on? We will go to, next is the student information system. And Maddie, you going to kind of lead us in that one again?
I just got to get back to where I was. And there it is. Okay. So student information system, so this goes back to January 18th, I believe was the day, but we had 3 vendors out. We had JMC, who's our current student information management system, or student management system out, and we had Skyward, and we also had Infinite Campus. Those were the 3, and Skyward and Infinite Campus, along with JMC, those are probably the 3 biggest that are in the state of Minnesota. Skyward has a big presence as well in Wisconsin, but as far as Minnesota is concerned, those are kind of the 3 big ones. They all had time to give a pitch. They pitched their student information system, they pitched their business software, and then they also pitched their district-wide suite as well. I guess, this is something that is, to me, JMC doesn't necessarily continue to move at the pace that we're looking to move. One of the things that is going to be critically important as we move forward is we are going to probably need to commit to a learning management system. At some point, We are going to be going to hybrid classes and online classes, and in order to do that, we need to have a learning management system. A lot of schools in the state have gone to Schoology. Schoology, I think a neighbor of ours just got a quote for Schoology, that's $10 per kid. So looking at this, in talking with our clerical people, they are the ones that actually live in these systems. Hands down, all of our clerical people are saying, let's make the move to Infinite Campus. The feedback that I have received from teachers is, they all have the grading capability. I don't necessarily know that there's any compelling one way or the other, but whichever one we're going to switch to, we just need to know how to use the grading and student side of things. The reason that personally that I think Infinite Campus is also a way to go is because on that chart you will see there is one provider right now who actually has a learning management system, and that's Infinite Campus. And so we can either make a switch to a provider, and then maybe a year from now, be looking at Schoology or something to do a learning management system that'll be compatible with our provider, or we can have our student information system that has everything compatible. My hope or my recommendation would be to move forward with Infinite Campus. The budget stuff that you are looking at, the 1920 budget, does have a switch to Infinite Campus built into it. So obviously if there was not a switch, then we would take those dollars out of the operating capital. Again, does switching student information system impact the general fund or the $200,000 we were just talking about? No, it doesn't. Because the student information system is what's coming out of operating capital. It's a categorical fund. It is not that general fund unassigned account. So, questions, board, thoughts?
2 questions.
Yes.
Do you know how long we had GMC? 10 years? I was just curious because we have this startup cost.
Yeah, I think it was
reasonably, if we have this company for 10 years, divide the startup cost by 10 years and it becomes a nominal number, which makes sense. In history, has Infinite Campus continually been a leader in keeping up with the advanced changes that we're looking for?
Yeah, so Infinite Campus has kind of an interesting story. It is a Minnesota company. They're headquartered in Blaine. It was actually a school official at, I believe it was Centennial Schools, who had an interest in computers, spreadsheets, whatever. He quit working for Centennial Schools and decided to go try and devise some software that schools could use. And a couple years later, Centennial Schools was his first client. From there, now Infinite Campus, I believe, is celebrating their 25th anniversary this year. They've also branched out, so they are in, obviously, public K-12 education, largely in Minnesota, but they're also in the upper Midwest, and they're also in some private industries as well, where they're doing some data management components. Interesting thing, I did call Infinite Campus. I told them about this meeting tonight. I told them that my recommendation was going to be to go with Infinite Campus. And the reason I called them was because our quotes and everything were expiring on February 22nd. And so I wanted to just tell them and make sure that the quotes I had were accurate. And whoever I was talking to on the phone, she said, oh, I've worked for Infinite Campus now for 8 years and they've never raised their prices. So I can't imagine your quote's going to be any different, but I'll let your sales guy know. So it seems to me like they have a stable model. New London Spicer is a local district who's on Infinite Campus. Some of the feedback that I've heard from them is the parents really enjoy the app that's available that is part of the program automatically. There's no extra charge for it. And the other local district that actually just went through the same process with the same vendors that we did was Albany, and they have also switched to Infinite Campus. They're in their first year, and they're very happy with the customer service available. Always, whenever you're switching over in a massive database, there's going to be glitches, and but the one thing they have said is Infinite's customer service has been wonderful.
Okay, other questions? So,
I'll
we
move to
agree
approve
with-
it.
Yep, go ahead.
Yep. I'll move to approve Infinite Campus as our student information system.
Okay, we have a motion from Ashley.
I'll second.
We have a second from Thomas. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Carried. Okay. Good job in analysis on that one, I do have to tell you. And I think you had lots of people involved with it, which I like. Review upcoming meetings.
I just want to run through these because I was looking at my calendar and March was filling up fast. So I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page, and clearly I had made a mistake and we weren't on the same page. So I just want to run through and make sure we're good to go. So teacher negotiations, we had a little hiccup. We were supposed to meet tomorrow. That's not happening. Tentatively, we will be meeting March 6th for teacher negotiations. Negotiating committee, I will send a confirmation email out once I hear from all the teacher members on that. But right now, March 6th is what the plan is. The next West Central Ed Board meeting is March 11th. March 12th, there's the Community Ed Advisory. And then later in the day is the Work and Learn. So this is the question. March 12th is Township Election Day. What I'm wondering is there a way that we could start that Work and Learn meeting at 4 p.m.? UNESCO would like to come out. They would like to take 60 minutes of the Work and Learn in order to update the board with where they're at and kind of what they're seeing and where the direction they're going. And then they also want to talk about community engagement. The other things that we need to talk about on the 12th is I have 30 minutes for communication items for the administrative team, and I have 30 minutes for the 1920 budget. So those are the three items that would be on the Work and Learn agenda. We have to adjourn that agenda at 6, or that meeting at 6 p.m. due to township elections. So could we start that meeting at 4 p.m.?
Yeah.
Seeing head shakes? Okay.
Yes.
So we will
What
post
time is
that.
the community ed meeting that day?
Community Ed's a lunch one. It's okay. So 4 p.m. will be the start time for Work and Learn. And that will be the middle school media center. March 13th is district-wide staff development committee. March 18th is policy committee. That policy committee meeting again is an evening, and that'll be in my office. March 20th is the day of the Capitol for Schools for Equity and Education. I haven't got final confirmation on that day. As soon as I do, I will get that to you. March 21, I am hoping to get a 6 o'clock meeting for kickoff on Culture and Climate Committee. Anderson, Lutch, and Belcher. We make March 21 at 6 p.m.
I
Yep.
think so.
Okay?
Yeah.
And let's plan on Middle School Media Center for March 21, School Culture and Climate Committee. And then Rick, March 25 is the C meeting in Kimball. And then we'll be back here on March 26th for our business meeting for March. That's what I have on the school board calendar for March. Okay? All right.
Okay, we're done with that. Now we are in H, and it's the recommendation of the superintendent to close the Board of Education meeting for the purpose of discussing negotiation strategy. And I'm looking for a motion pretty much according to how it's printed here.
I make a motion to close the board education meeting at 7:34.
And I'll second it. So we have a motion from Rick, a second from myself. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. We'll move to closed session.
If everyone's willing to not be in this room, we'll just have that closed session right here.